Why is feedback important in CBD? In competence by design, also known as CBD, receiving meaningful feedback in the clinical workplace is one of the most frequent requests made by residents to support their learning. Feedback is essential, especially when residents are expected to be more self-directed and proactive in improving their clinical performance. What is effective feedback? Within clinical education, effective feedback has been described as specific information about the comparison between a trainee's observed performance and a standard, given with the intent to improve the trainee's performance. Effective feedback occurs when the trainees are offered insight into their actions and the consequences. Such insight is valuable because it highlights the difference between the intended and the actual result and provides a desire for change. On the teacher's part, it also conveys an attitude of concern for the progress and development of a person in a real sense and not just as a function of grades or test scores. How to phrase feedback. Feedback should be both descriptive and non-judgmental. Phrasing feedback as, "that was awful," or "it was terrible," will always create defensiveness. A description of what happened might be more helpful. Don't judge the person who performs the action, describe the action executed by the person. Feedback should describe behavior, which can be changed, rather than personality. The process should help the learner and not provide a platform for the facilitator to promote their knowledge, superiority, or power. A nonspecific phrase such as, "you appeared empathetic," without a description of the episode being referred to is of no use. It is better to point out a specific behavior as it helps the learners to look at the skills they've used to develop an ability. It also helps to understand the meaning of the ability. For example, expressing empathy during a difficult decision. Feedback is not a prescription for change. It may even be useful to encourage the student to undertake an assessment of their own performance and suggest remedial measures. This often brings up the points that the teacher is trying to make and reduce the perceived harshness of the feedback, especially when it involves sensitive topics. Sometimes the students may raise issues not thought of by the teacher, which then need to be addressed. This makes the process of feedback interactive. Feedback given should be limited to the amount of information that can be dealt with comfortably. Excessive volumes of feedback may overwhelm the learner and prevent any changes from taking place. Which are the most common barriers to giving effective feedback? A fear of upsetting the trainee or damaging the resident-consultant relationship, a fear of doing more harm than good, the resident being resistant or defensive when receiving criticism, feedback being too generalized and not related to specific facts or observations, feedback not giving guidance as to how to rectify the behavior, inconsistent feedback from multiple sources, and a lack of respect for the source of feedback. How to give feedback to assess a specific and trustable professional activity, or EPA. The structure for giving feedback will be agreed between you and the resident. It is important that both you and the resident are fully prepared. Before a formal feedback session begins, you should, first, ensure the learner is aware that he or she is going to receive feedback and clearly define the purpose of the feedback session before or at the outset of the session. Second, summarize the feedback and ensure that you know the positive aspects and that the areas for improvement are listed. The elements required to prepare for performing an EPA. Then set the scene. Create an appropriate environment. Clarify ground rules. Example, what part of the EPA the resident is to concentrate upon. Agree upon a teaching focus. Gain the patient's consent and cooperation. Encourage the resident to self-assess his or her performance before giving feedback. Aim to encourage dialogue. Reinforce good practice with specific examples. Identify, analyze, and explore potential solutions for poor performance or deficits in practice. Finally, after the session, you should complete an outstanding documentation, carry out any agreed follow-up activities or actions, make sure that opportunities for additional learning are arranged, and set a date for the next EPA assessment if required.
That is something which you really need to work on, and I think by Friday end you should be able to get it.
Okay, that'd be great. I'd look forward to that.
Yes, that was wonderful.
All right, thank you.
Overall, it was a good day.
Okay, thanks.
Do not forget these final tips. Find an appropriate time and place. Agree on what the focus will be. Start with what went well. Accentuate the positive, distinguish between the intention and the effect. Differentiate between the performance and the personal. Example, what you said sounded judgmental rather than you are judgmental. Identify areas for improvement. Offer alternatives and check for understanding. Don't forget, effective feedback can stimulate learning and competence development by encouraging residents to perform well and identifying inadequate behavior. Visit our website to find more videos and information related to CBD.